Yeah, I think it would be really, really ignorant to say that there are not people out there who do worship the devil, who do worship these deities.
I have been so confused by Balenciaga. Not really by the symbols that they're showing, not really by the fact that they're pushing the weird sex stuff and even the Satanism. But I've been confused by it because I don't know anything about high fashion or runways or anything. I thought, what is going on in these boardrooms? What is going on in these design teams that would actually convince you that you should put an S&M teddy bear and a sad-looking little kid and some caution tape that says Baal, the most well-known demon probably of all time, in your shoot, and that's going to fly? How could you convince yourself that that's going to fly? What do I know? That's why I had to bring some models on to help explain it to me. We welcome back to the show Lauren Smolka, a past Miss Hollywood who has competed in both the Miss America and Miss USA organizations and has done runway work for Giovanni Fashions and other clothing brands. Maria Montgomery, we welcome back to the show, former Miss Kentucky USA, runner-up to Miss USA, who has done all sorts of modeling and has walked the runway for Marchesa and Isaac Mizrahi. I was this close to walking the runway for those guys, but they didn't. I was the runner-up. And then we welcome to the show for the first time Grace Smith, who is another model who has done work for all sorts of household brands, well-known brands, Hermes, Nizzolo, lots of others as well. Ladies, thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course.
Absolutely excited to be back.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Lauren, I want to start with you. I remember I was watching, I guess it was the Balenciaga fashion show before all this weird Satan stuff blew up, and I was looking at all the models walk around, and it looked like they were walking around in trash bags and sort of Darth Vader robes and just kind of weird, dark, muddy, ugly stuff. And I thought, wait, hold on. If this is high fashion, if this is supposed to be the height of beauty, I must be missing something.
Well, I feel like with Balenciaga, it is a very different brand than even a lot of other high-end brands. I personally have never worn it, but I have a lot of friends who are in the high-end fashion world. And what they had to say about it is it is a very it has a very artistic take on clothing that a lot of high-end brands typically don't have. So again, it's things that I typically would not wear, but everybody who I have talked to who does wear it and who is attracted to the brand likes the artistic take that they take on a lot of their designs.
But I'm not opposed to artistic things. I love the paintings of Raphael and Titian and Michelangelo. And my problem with Balenciaga is that the art that they are putting out there is not beautiful. It's ugly. It's seemingly intentionally and offensively ugly and grotesque. Maria, why would a fashion brand that is supposed to appeal to people and attract people, and they hire all these beautiful women to put on clothing, why would they put them in such ugly clothing?
You know, that's a question I've been asking myself for 14 years of modeling now. But I think the biggest thing is everyone just wants publicity. Any publicity sometimes can be seen as good publicity because now we're talking about it. Even in the Marchesa show that you referenced previously, they had us with crazy hair, teased out the wazoo, massive things that you would just never wear in real life. I think sometimes we lose sight of what is attractive and what is flattering in order to make a statement. And I think this is a prime example of when that has gone way too far.
Of course, and people are attracted to attention at all costs. So then is what you're saying that it's very difficult to make beautiful things and get attention for making beautiful things, but it's much easier rather to make ugly things. And if you put a trash bag on your head and start holding up Satan puppets, that you'll get attention and it's pretty easy to do it. Is that what you're saying?
Sadly, I guess so. I think so many people are just after that attention, but at the same time, they may have one pretty piece in the whole collection, and then the crazy ones are what drive you in to look at the one pretty one. Even though you don't see people wearing these things down the street, yes, there are great items from any high fashion designer, but there's a time and a place for those things. 9 times out of 10, those statement pieces that are a little crazy, which Balenciaga is very known for, especially just in their styling of the runway shows with walking through mud and things like that. I think it's just mostly about making a statement, and then you come to them to purchase the more realistic items of their collection.
So I guess the most interesting thing to me is how unsurprised both of you have been. I look at this, even before the weird pedo Satan stuff, I'm looking at the mud fashion show. I'm saying, what on earth? But what you seem nonplussed by. You seem to say, well, that's just Balenciaga. That's what they do. Grace, were you surprised at all with this story coming out of Balenciaga?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, I wasn't surprised, but I was a little sad, especially given the history of Balenciaga. It's one of the most notable brands starting back in 1919. So no, not shocked for where we are today, but it is kind of sad to see kind of the downturn of the brand.
So it's a downturn of the brand. Do you think it's a downturn of high fashion generally?
Yeah, I think we could probably confidently say that at this point. I think there's just a lack of appreciation for true beauty and true art these days. And we see that in our modern architecture, our modern art, and now we're seeing that in our fashion. So it's a sad day, I guess.
So what caused it? If we're saying here that fashion used to be more oriented toward beauty and used to be more normal and wasn't always pushing S&M teddy bears and little kids and little ball tape, then what changed? Lauren, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I definitely, with this campaign that came out, I absolutely think there was an agenda being pushed. And anyone who thinks otherwise, I would like to think there's just a naive aspect there in their thought process. But this is something where a ton of thought goes into this. We know this. We're in the modeling industry. We're artists. We're actors. We know that prep goes into this. Thought goes into this. Countless meetings, countless calls of storyboards. Does this look okay? What do you think about this? I would love to be in one of these meetings prior to this campaign and see if anybody said anything, if anybody questioned that this isn't normal. And my concern is that this isn't just the conditioning of children, but the fact that more adults have not spoken up. This is the fact that shows how many adults are now conditioned in our day and age to think that this is normal behavior and normal fashion.
That's a great point. The fact that we're all just sort of numb to this, or many people are numb to this, shows you just how effective this sort of campaign has been. And to your point, I'm glad you affirmed for me my suspicion that the Balenciaga excuse of, oh, whoopsie daisy, yeah, we should have had a little more oversight. Sometimes it happens. You set up a photo shoot and an S&M teddy bear just walks on, and a little kid is frowning, and we have references to Satan and ball and child pornography. It's just like, just our luck, that all just coincidentally happened at the same time. Maria, if you're in the meeting and you're sitting around the table, you're talking to some people. There's this guy Demna something or other. There was this other stylist who was working with Balenciaga, and you look at some of their work. And a lot of their work, even beyond Balenciaga, gets very, very dark. A number of people have gone to their Instagram pages and seen just weird fascinations with all sorts of depraved sexual acts and overt satanic imagery. And it's going back a long, long time. So it wasn't just from this photo shoot. So who are these people? Who are the people who are designing these shows? And, on a scale from just a accident and a coincidence to Alex Jones, these are demons meeting in the woods to turn the frickin' frogs gay, like where does this fall on that scale?
Well, I think the most important thing to consider is how many people are on a set like this. So even for any smaller campaigns that I have even shot for, there are no less than 15 people on set physically. That does not include the post photo shoot, where there's editing, where there's light adjustments, and the multiple approving process. Even if I just do a social media influencing campaign for a brand, I have to get approval before I post it and or before they post it. And then same thing with modeling. Like I said, that shoot is intensive. And especially a brand like Balenciaga, this is not a small budget. This is a big, big shoot. And these shoots are not an e-commerce shoot. This is not what happens Monday through Friday, like a lot of more so department store type brands shoot. This is a big scheduled thing and way in advance. And then these photos get multiple steps of approval. So there is a stylist. There's probably a stylist assistant. There's a designer. There's a photographer assistant. And just to think that that this didn't get caught. And I agree, Lauren. I want to assume that they were naive and that it was just a mistake and they missed it. But someone said they brought in addition to the Adidas collaboration where they brought the court document of the child pornography, that got slipped in there by accident from a prop room. Well, I mean, that just goes to further the case of there's just too many variables here that are matching up. This can't be a mistake, that whether someone maybe on the crew decided to do this and hopefully didn't get caught and they're now happy that it's out there, or maybe it was an agreement. We don't know, obviously. And I can't understand why they would think, and I would hope that this isn't true, that they would think publicity is good, even if in the side of child pornography.
This is what I don't understand is, there's that thesis, which is, well, they just, all press is good press and they just wanted to make a splash and shock people. And there's pretty much nothing more shocking than child pornography. So that's what we're going to do. Or given the backlash, were they just trying to sneak it in? It's not as though that court document referencing a child pornography case from actually another child pornography case, it's not as though that were so obvious. It was, you kind of had to zoom in and look at the text of it. It's not as though this child were actually, splayed out in some overtly sexual position. It was a little more subtle with, he was holding a teddy bear with the weird sex costume on. I mean, so I'm using subtle in a liberal way, but what I'm telling you is it wasn't totally 100% in your face. So then the other thesis is, were they just trying to slip in a kind of subtle, almost subliminal message and hope that they would not be caught? Grace, what do you think?
Yeah, that's really hard to say. I think there have been a lot of subtle things happening in the fashion industry for decades at this point. So yes, it could have been a subtle hint. They could have, been more purposeful in what they were placing there. It's really hard to say, but I kind of tend to go with, you have to call a spade. And if it was there, most likely it was intentionally there.
Yes, certainly intentional. I just wonder if they were trying for their message to be consciously understood, or if this were part of a broader campaign, as Lauren, you referenced, of people just indoctrinating the whole culture such that even the adults become numb to it. And even the adults say, oh, well, what's wrong here? Oh, it's child S&M thing. Oh, I didn't even notice it, and they just sort of move on and on. So if the industry has gotten this bad, have you seen this in your personal experience? I mean, have you seen this as you're doing runways, as you're doing photo shoots? Or is this something where you look at it and you say, oh no, it's really just Balenciaga. Maybe it trickles down, but it's not. It hasn't made it all the way down to all the other brands as well. Lauren?
Well, I personally haven't seen a whole lot of it. I've been in the industry a very long time, but I was not as a child, and I can't help but think maybe this is one of the reasons why my parents didn't want me to get too much into the industry when I was younger, which I very much respect them for now. But what's very interesting about this, when I was doing some research on it, so many of the first articles that came up when I just Googled Balenciaga conspiracy or Balenciaga controversy, the first articles that came up where this controversy spirals right-wing conspiracy theorists. And what blows my mind is that this is something that anything involving children and a sexual topic, the fact that that is a conspiracy theory, that's the hill that I'm willing to die on, anything that involves children.
Right. Well, and you bring up a great point. The way that this was covered in the press was not Balenciaga does this shocking, terrible thing. It was conservatives pounce. The conspiracy theorists are making, a mountain out of a molehill. But we know that that wasn't the case because Balenciaga came out immediately, scrubbed its Instagram page, threatened to sue for tens of millions of dollars the people who allegedly were behind the shoot. That now they've actually withdrawn that lawsuit because I suspect they realize that they can't just blame this on some photographer or on some marketing company. They realize that it was their own creative directors, their own stylists who were behind a lot of this stuff. And so now but they're obviously taking it very, very seriously. So you could see a contradiction between the liberal press lying and saying, oh, it's not a big deal, you're just making something out of nothing. And Balenciaga saying, no, this is a huge deal, and we're going to take legal action against the people who were behind it. Maria, I mean, do you find this to be a widespread phenomenon in the industry?
I agree. I don't necessarily, again, a lot of my brands that I shoot for regularly are beauty brands and more household brands, not so much the high-end editorial, which I also have kind of designed my career to be shaped in that direction on purpose to avoid situations like this. So I just think regardless, it's what you choose and what you, again, like you referenced, what you allow and what we begin to get used to. And I hope that's not the way this industry is going. But at the end of the day, whether they are claiming that they didn't know, ignorance is not an excuse. Like I said, there's way too many people to approve this campaign before it goes public. So, and that includes zooming in to read a document. That's not hard. We can do that on our iPhone. So why is it hard for a marketing agency to think to do that? And again, this is not one shoot out of 100 that they did that week. This is a big campaign. And so a lot of time and effort went into this. And so whether they want to pretend that they didn't see it or whether people were behind it and trying to give us that subconscious notion of this dark side, it's not a left or a right argument. It's instead just children involved, and that's never okay.
I'm relieved to hear you say that it hasn't really trickled down to some of the more normal, popular brands. It's because it really ties into something that I've noticed for a long time, which is that most people are basically normal, but for whatever reason, the people at the very, very tippy top of our political system, of our media, of our academic institutions, of all the people at the ruling elite, they tend to be nuts. I mean, they tend to believe some really kooky, crazy things. If you look at the transing the kids movement right now, 80%, probably 90% plus of Americans strongly oppose that. So why are we hearing so much about it? Because the people in power are super into it. And this is true when you talk about, legalizing abortion in all cases. 94% of Americans don't think that abortion should be legal in all cases. But the people who are at the top of so many institutions, they're the ones who are pushing it. They're the radical people, the people that Senator John Kennedy, in his foghorn leghorn voice, says they're the high IQ stupid people. And so I just have to wonder what is wrong with these people at the very tippy top that they would push this satanic imagery. Grace, what do you think? Is it that this is the satanic, weird, leather chains, dungeon kind of imagery, the Baal references, it's just a way to be kind of edgy, like, online atheists or something like that? It's just kind of cheeky and shocking. Or do you think that these people actually have a spiritual and religious fascination with the devil?
Yeah, I think it would be really, really ignorant to say that there are not people out there who do worship the devil, who do worship these deities. I think one of Satan's best tricks that he's ever played is to convince the world that he doesn't exist and that he's more of a caricature than an actual, spirit or, whatever you believe him to be. So can I accuse these people of being demon worshipers? Maybe not. But at the same time, I would always just call a spade a spade. And if this is the kind of thing that they're putting out into their work, then most likely this is something that's deeply connected to their heart. So unfortunately.
I agree with you. You seem quite confident, though, in saying, no, there actually, listen, you secular liberals, there actually are people who worship the devil. There actually are people who worship demons. Do you have some experience with this? Have you seen this? Or is this just your intuition?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Nashville, but my mom is from a small island above Venezuela. And so there is a lot of supernatural stuff that happens on the island. My mom has had confrontations with what she would say are maybe demons. She's seen them. There's just a lot of spiritual activity happening there. So I can confidently say that it's real, it exists, and I think the Western church has done a great job at downplaying it and making it seem as though it doesn't.
Huh. It's funny because that's an amazing story. And you always hear about voodoo and all sorts of witchcraft and things in some of these cultures. But you're saying, no, my mother actually has seen it. It's kind of a common thing. And I totally believe it. I'm with Antonin Scalia on this point, who once said to a pompous, ignorant interviewer, who was shocked that he believed in God and was a Catholic. He said, I even believe in the devil. He said, many more intelligent people than you and I have believed in the devil and believed that the devil exists. And some people go further and worship him. And I'm inclined to believe what you're saying, Grace, which is that, if you constantly use this kind of imagery, the pentagrams and red horns and the ball and the this and the that, and you're using images that have cropped up for all of human history, and you're sort of ironically worshiping the devil, as many of these edgy leftist people try to do. Well, if you do that ironically forever, it's not ironic anymore. You can't ironically worship somebody forever. You're just ultimately doing it sincerely. And the fact that very high-end fashion, not even just regular kind of middle of the pack, but that very high-end elite fashion, they're engaged in all these kinds of creepy, outright occult kinds of practices and symbols is perhaps not surprising, but it is a bit of a cause for alarm. Ladies, thank you for coming back and helping me to understand this topic that I will admit, I've never walked the fashion runway. Lauren Smolka, Maria Montgomery, Grace Smith, just going down the line, where can we find you?
You can find me, Lauren Smolka, on Instagram.
And you can find me just at Maria Montgomery on Instagram as well.
And you can find me at Grace TH Smith on Instagram as well.
And you can find me on The Michael Knowles Show. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. We'll see you tomorrow.